Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. We have with us tonight for this one, Lynne Nickerson, author of Gateway to the Paranormal, True Personal Accounts of the Unexplained. She also co-hosts a podcast herself, Spirit Radio, The Paranormal Experience, with Willy Hassell, who we've had on the show before, talk about the USS Salem. They both have had, adventures together. They obviously do the show together. They've done a couple of videos on some of these investigations, if I'm not mistaken. They've hosted a TV show, Edge of Reality TV, and we were trying to get him on the show. He was busy, but it's like Lynne was gracious to join with us. So we're really looking forward to that, to talk about her book and her work on the show. So everybody sit back, enjoy. Lynne Nickerson is next. Welcome to the Three Beards podcast. My name is Craig, along with Austin and Chris.
Passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century.
Let me out.
I'm afraid that is right.
Then live to send the innocent to their death? Is this justice and honor in Massachusetts colony?
All right, Chris, how are you? We are sans Austin tonight.
Yeah, doing wonderful. Ready for the show.
So we're also going to bring on, we have a special guest host today. He attempted, he might have a hair on his chin, but it is Mark Eddy. He is with us again. So I don't know if you can zoom in there. I don't know if he's got anything on his face or not. Yeah, maybe. Maybe he's got a little stubble. Yeah, there we go. All right.
I did shave about 24 hours ago. So.
Well, it takes time. It takes time. Well, awesome. Hey, this is an awesome introduction for our guest. I know it. So everybody, welcome Lynne Nickerson to the show. How are you?
Oh, just great. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, I think you might be muted. Oh, there you are.
What was that? Can you hear me now?
Yep. We hear you.
Yeah, it was. Hey, what? Yeah.
Since his hello.
Look forward to. Yeah. Well, great. I said it was. I'm sorry he wasn't able to make it, but at the same time, it was fantastic that you were able to come on with us. So that we at least, we tried to get the duo, but I don't know.
We're not joined at the hip. That's okay.
Yeah, but we got them. We got the brains behind the operation, didn't we? Yeah, that's what we always say. It's like, because that's how it keeps us out of trouble. That's right. So know that you guys have quite a few things going on. I mean, they said you have Facebook. If everybody goes Spirit Radio, The Paranormal Experience, it's on. You can go there, like the group. It shows the different YouTube videos that they have. You also, with our, Dennis Stone, you guys were also part there with America's Stonehenge, and that's one of the things we want to talk to you about tonight too.
Right.
Yeah, that was something that was pretty interesting, because in the two times that we've talked to this, he's never mentioned haunted occurrences that required investigation. So I have to, next time he's on, we'll have to talk to him about why he didn't talk to us about floating rocks, because I want to know about that.
Talking about Dennis himself.
Yep. Yeah. So we'll have to. But everybody, thanks for tuning in as well. I appreciate it. So, well, let's start off. So what got you and Willy together on this project, the Spirit Radio Paranormal Experience?
Well, I've had an abiding interest in the paranormal since I was a really small child. And I don't know, I've always kept track of all of my different episodes. And I was deciding that I was going to write a book. And then we happened to get together at KRI, Kit Research Initiative. And that was a place where you could discuss anything paranormal without people putting it down.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided that we had a lot of commonality as far as the paranormal was concerned. We both wanted to do a radio show, so we both took an engineering lesson at the station at WSCA in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And Willie became the tech guy, and I kind of became the force behind the information, the host and whatnot.
Nice.
And we did that for 6 years. We took a hiatus for 2 years, and we're talking about kickstarting it again. We're in negotiations about that.
Now, was it just due to busy schedules? Was that what the hiatus was?
You're right. You're right. My brother had passed away. We've been working on
that.
So thank you. The TV show, and then we were just swamped with investigations and doing another filming project. We had to take a break.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah,
you get a lot of those. It's just
one of those nexuses in life. Nexuses, yeah, where everything comes together and you just can't really handle anything else and handle it well. So we had to give ourselves a break.
Yeah, that's now during that time. I know you said, how is it coming along with your second book? Because we're going to be talking about the one that you have out right now, Gateway to the Paranormal.
I've got about 1/3 of the stories ready. So I continue to work on it.
Yeah, that's one of the things. Like, so we'll get to that here in 1 second, because that's one I'm really looking forward to, because some of the stories you just are fantastic. I mean, before we get, because I promised you we would. And Willie will get after me if especially if I don't either. It's like, you guys have the Para Expo coming up.
Oh yeah, I was going to talk about that toward the end, but I can give you some info on that now if you'd like.
Yeah, we'll start that, and we'll also remind everybody at the end, because I want to make sure it's covered, so that way I don't get in trouble for not saying it, because I will forget.
I know, I'll get reprimanded as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Willie had done some investigating on the USS Salem, which is called the Sea Witch, and that's because the Salem is close to.
Did you freeze on my end, or just?
Yeah, I was just about to ask you. She
okay. All right. We'll wait for her to catch back in here. So.
Yeah.
But.
And
she's back.
To it. So this is going to be about 9 months away. It's May 20, 21, and 22. It's produced by Spirit Chasers Paranormal, which Willie founded, and then Connecticut Paranormal Research Team. Some very good friends of ours out of Connecticut. So it's a tentative schedule, but on Friday night we're going to have a ghost hunt, which is going to be hosted by a Boston Paranormal team, and the head of that is Don Cristofaro. I failed to write the full name down. So there's a ghost hunt on Friday night. On Saturday night, there are going to be all kinds of vendor tables. This is going to be on the ship itself. Vendor tables set up. There's going to be a gallery reading by a really good psychic medium who's a good friend of mine. And then there's going to be a full day of speakers. So we have about 13 to 15 speakers. People have faded in and out with their schedules. They've had schedule conflicts. But there's about 15. And I'm going to be presenting something too. And then on Sunday, we'll have a few more speakers. And I believe there are going to be some people doing card readings at the vendor tables. And of course, selling wares and books and whatnot. So that's May 20, 21, and 22 of 2022 on board the USS Salem, which is nicknamed the Sea Witch in Quincy, Massachusetts.
Yeah, we've had the Greater Boston Paranormal Associates on a couple of times.
That's what it is. Yeah, yep. Don Cristofaro, yes.
Yep, Don Cristofaro, Eva Nagy, Sandra, Pat, and Jim. Yeah, we've talked to some. Yeah, we've good friends. Like I said, we just had a couple, maybe not even a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, maybe 2 weeks ago we had Don and Eva on.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks.
Yeah, so they're
always interesting.
Yes,
they have incredible experiences.
Yeah, I nicknamed Eva Greater Boston's Madame Leota, their personal Madame Leota. Yep. And so, with her talent. But yeah, that's going to be a great, we want to get on that ship so bad, get out there and do that tour, because that's going to be something. Yeah, that would. So when I can get out there, that is definitely.
The setting of the ship for the conference sounds neat.
Oh yeah.
Isn't it different? It's a different type of venue.
I mean, this might be, maybe right off the top of your head, maybe it's a hard question to answer just off the cuff, but what's the capacity for an event like that? I mean, because like most things.
To about 200.
Okay, because I say, like most conferences, you have the conference room, you have people just going everywhere. I mean, you got narrow corridors. You're going to have. You do. Yeah.
It's pretty much going to be held on just one of the levels. I think it's going to be the first level down.
Okay.
They've got the most rooms, kind of like more public space, the kitchen and a couple of libraries and like a small conference room area. So that's pretty much going to be it on that first level down.
Okay. That's if you don't mind, I'll talk to Dawn, too. Just we'd love to see some pictures of it. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you're going to post them on your page, probably.
Well, as a matter of fact, there is a website. What I was going to say is on Facebook.com/Para Expo 2022. There is, it lists the website link, which is very long, but on the website there are several photos, easy to get to. So Facebook.com/Para Expo 2022.
So I can bring that up. That was a Para Expo 2022. Okay. And then, we've got. So I don't want to get too far sidetracked here, but I definitely want to, start getting to your book. What was the inspiration for the writing of that book?
Well, I was afraid I was going to wind up forgetting all of these experiences. Half the time, too, you don't understand it. You experience the paranormal, but you can't explain it. And sometimes you feel foolish about it, and you wonder, have other people experienced this? So it was sort of started as a paranormal primer, and to help people expand their awareness that there are things out there that we simply do not understand, that our present science does not explain. And also, too, there have been several instances where I feel that my life was spared because I listened to nudges and intuition. And I talk about a couple of those in there too. But also UFOs, I started experiencing that when I was 10 years old. So I knew by the time that Betty and Barney Hill's story came out that there were UFOs. And it just baffles me that people still discuss the fact, gee, do you really think there are UFOs? Are they real? How can they not be? How can there not be life on other planets in other galaxies? I mean, as a 10-year-old, I knew that. How can adults not understand that?
Yeah. No, and kind of like we've said that. There's just, so what was your first experience that you had, just kick off? Because I know, just like side note, because everybody has like, what they think is like a shooting star, but then you have that one where it'll go straight out and then all of a sudden it'll just make this unnatural like takeoff. And okay, that can't be a natural phenomenon. My sister, I'm jealous. My sister saw it. She saw a triangle craft. And I'm like, wow. I'm the one, I'm with, for everybody that can't see it right now, I'm the one that has the I want to believe poster on my thing. I haven't seen a UFO. My sister on a hike with my dad. Yeah. And my sister on a hike sees the triangle craft. And I'm like, come on.
Wow. Was she in Arizona?
What's that?
Where was she when she saw it?
This is in out in a place called Silver Falls State Park in Oregon.
In Oregon, okay.
Yeah, and and it hovered right there. She said, triangle shape, just hovered there like that, and then just took off away. And I'm just like, man, isn't that the case? You got the people that want to see it, and then you got somebody that could care less, like, oh yeah, I saw some big furry thing cross the road, and you've got people that have been searching their whole life trying to see Bigfoot, and you got somebody that could care less is the one that sees it. Yeah.
Well, my first experience was I had two in the same summer of 1961 when I was 10 years old. The first one was I found myself crouched down at my bedroom window looking out at the sky. It was out in the middle of the country in East Kingston, about 15 miles from the coast and about 15 miles from Pease Air Force Base in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which at the time was a strategic air command base. So I'm only 10 years old, and what I saw out in the sky was a squadron of red UFOs. The sky was full of them.
Wow.
And it was like looking at a static picture. And I do not remember going back to bed. I just remember waking up and remembering the dream. And then after that, it was like probably July and August. So next month, August, I had a dream where I woke up. I was frozen in bed. I was paralyzed and looking straight ahead because I couldn't move and I couldn't talk. I saw suspended in my doorway a green ET. It was green and phosphorescent, and it was suspended in my doorway. It was about 3 feet high. And the only thing I could compare it to is the Michelin Man icon for Michelin tires.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it looked like. It looked like an inflatable spacesuit.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it took me 50 years to find some other accounts of people who actually called it the Michelin Man, that they saw ETs that looked like the Michelin Man. 50 years before I found 5 more accounts of other people that had seen the same thing.
Is
1961.
Is that a rare description?
Well, it must be, Mark, because I could only find 5 different accounts. There were 2 on Reunion Island in the Indian Ocean. There was 1 in Spain. There was 1 in the Midwest of the United States. And then, let me just pull this out because I brought this with me tonight. Then there was an account in Switzerland. And right there, a small ET with an inflated spacesuit, that happened in July 31st, 1952, a little bit before what I saw. And that was photographed by Guillaume Piero Monguzzi in Switzerland by the church in Galatia. He was with his wife, and he said that, oh, yes, very much like that. That's amazing. That's a great shot. So the only thing that it was lacking that I saw was the antenna, because you can clearly see the antenna in this picture. So
Okay.
that was Switzerland. So those were the 5 accounts that I could find. And the ones from Spain and Reunion Island, and the other one from the Midwest, which was seen by, her name is Annie Wilder, and she wrote Trucker Ghost Stories, a great little book. But in it, she talks about seeing the Michelin Man. So they called it out as looking like the Michelin Man as well. And those accounts were from several of them in the 70s, and then several in 1980, 1985, and in the 80s anyway. So they weren't all seen close together. But it's odd that they saw very much the same thing that I did.
So the one in the Midwest, was that one close to a military base as well? Or do you have any information on where that one was sighted at?
I forgot the state. Annie Wilder was driving home from a funeral with her sister on I-94, and they followed a truck that had the Michelin Man hanging off of it. Now, I know that sounds very bizarre, but they were driving through mountainous terrain, and it looked like the ET was going to fall off, but he kept looking at them. And then finally, once the snowstorm was over, the ET disappeared. And they both thought that maybe they were so tired that they hallucinated it, that they compared notes later on and saw the same thing. And that was in 1985 when she had her experience. And I believe that was the last one.
Yeah, Lynn, those accounts seem widely spaced in time and locations, like
Yes.
India, Spain,
The globe.
Midwest, over a 30-year period.
50.
Yeah, 50-year period. I don't know what you make of that. It's seems like a very rare sighting. You also don't get too many sightings with the ETs with wearing clothes either.
That's true. Yep, it was. Well, the first one was in 1952 with that Munguzi sighting,
Mhm.
and there's a good picture of that in Earth and Alien Enterprise by Timothy Good. That's a great book, but he talks about that. Um, what everybody saw differed a little bit. One of the Spanish sightings was two of them in a Michelin suit, but they were both red suits. Very odd. One was 6 feet tall, one was 3 feet tall. But again, it was the inflatable suits. In the dictionary that I've got from 1992, there's a picture of an inflatable spacesuit, and that came into being in 1936. So we were working on space travel then, and I'm sure we got information, from off planet on space gear, space wear. So anyway, the other two were white Michelin, and the other one was red. And what Annie saw, I believe, was white as well, but mine was phosphorescent green. I didn't find another one like that. But same description, about 3 feet tall. Most of them were 3 feet tall. Only one of them was 6 feet.
Now, this isn't the alien, but can we all just get how creepy the original Michelin Man was?
Very much like that.
Yeah, I was looking for the picture. When I saw this, I'm like, what is that? And I'm like, I'm like, oh, I found the alien. I'm like, no, this is one of the original Michelin Man costumes. Where they're going, like, who sees that and thinks tires?
I know, who does?
Oh,
It would have been better off to make that a toilet paper commercial because he looks
Oh,
like
my
he's wrapped
Lord.
in toilet paper.
yeah. So anyway, yeah, that was, like I said, that's a little unrelated, but I got that. I was just like, oh my, that's a Halloween costume. I'm the original Michelin Man. You're creepy. So, wow, yeah. So, continue it on like with your book. So, I mean, that is a tremendous, encounter. I mean, I can see why that would instill, just, this passion for the subject, like trying to discover that, because that's something that until really you describe that, I don't think I've ever even heard of the Michelin Man alien.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, 50 years to find some accounts. I always thought, was that a dream? But now I really believe that it was an altered state of reality. And keep in mind, too, that it was Betty and Barney Hill. They had their episode in September 19th and 20th of 1961. So they had their experience the next month after I had mine. Not that they saw the Michelin Man, but it was in the Exeter, New Hampshire area. They had been traveling back from Canada. So it was actually northern New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
But that whole area, close to the seacoast with the Strategic Air Command base. And then in 1965, I don't know what was going on except that Peace Air Force Base was contemplating whether or not to sort of disengage themselves from being a Strategic Air Command. They decided to continue with it, but what happened in 65 again was on September 3rd, you get the incident at Exeter, which included Exeter and Kensington, New Hampshire, and the next town is East Kingston. And my brother during that time was chased by a UFO in a potato field. I really think he was abducted. And then in November 9th, 1965 was the Great New England Blackout.
Ah.
So synchronicity, coincidence, I think it's, Peace Air Force Base had nuclear weapons then.
Mm-hmm.
So there's got to
Yeah.
be some kind of connection to my way of thinking in retrospect. And as a 10-year-old, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's because it's one of those things, and I think that for me in all the UFO accounts, and it's one of those things, and it's why it's always kind of led me to wonder if there is some tie to some military craft is why, but there's always so many that are around a military base.
Yep.
And so I wondered if, some people are seeing military, it sound like Project Blue Book here, what you saw was a craft that took off, in the swamp gas and the fog. No, but it's one of those, I don't know if they're paying attention to what would be our military installations, or if it's a combination. Like we're seeing a phenomenon, but at the same time, we're also seeing us attempting to intercept.
Yeah. I think much of the interest in this particular century has been because of our nuclear weaponry. They've been very, very concerned over that. because according to the ETs, whatever we do here on Earth affects the whole universe. They do not want us using nuclear weapons. We have to think of more than just ourselves.
Yeah, I can't remember. I want to attribute the right. I just can't remember. They attributed it to like ringing a bell. Like every time we let off a nuke, it just hits
Yep.
that, and it's just like a wave that just goes out throughout the universe, and it gets people's attention because all of a sudden, it's peaceful, quiet, and all of a sudden you hear this dong, and it just rattles, and everybody's like, "What was that?" It's us humans over here, like, press the button again.
Not behaving ourselves.
Yeah,
Well,
we just keep
apparently
setting
really
off these nukes.
really detrimental effects in the rest of the universe. So we have to start behaving ourselves.
I mean, it doesn't help that we want to nuke the moon. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, it was. I think that's probably one of the craziest stories I think I ever heard, where that was one of the plans, was to shoot nukes at the moon.
Bell.
Yeah, I'm just like, whose great idea is that? Let's crack the moon in half and see what happens. And then hopefully we all survive. Yeah, you just see some of these plans from the 40s and 50s. You're like, who thought this up? Who actually thought this was a great idea?
Yeah.
But I guess is one thing. In hindsight, guys, that was a bad idea. That was a bad decision.
Sure.
Yeah, but no, and I need to put up the picture here for your book too. And I forgot to do that.
Oh, well.
Here. I go. You both have copies to show there.
See?
I want to bring it.
Oh,
Let me
thank
do
you,
my-
Mark.
Let me do my little Vanna White presentation.
Thank you. Very nice. Very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, and Lynn, I have a question from your book. You did a chapter on haunted objects, and there was this Madonna and child painting, and that's towards the end of the book. One of your first stories in your book is one on this music box. It is. There might be a little bit of a difference between haunted objects and maybe something like the music box is more of has a less ominous connotation, interpretation. Could you explain a little bit about both stories and how they're different, and some interpretations that we can come away from reading these stories with a better understanding of how the paranormal works?
Okay. Regarding the music boxes, I was living in a Victorian house in Kittery, and I don't know if it was haunted itself or if I brought things with me. I don't know. But both of those music boxes belonged to my mother. And the first one played on Halloween, I think it was 1988. And I was sitting watching TV, and I heard a crank from the other room. And then it started playing a few bars of Johann Strauss's Vienna Woods. And I went to the bedroom, and it was in a box that was cloth covered with foam packing on the inside. Nothing shook it, and it cranked and it played. So I figured it was my mother, but I thought, darn, I hope she's not telling me I'm going to die soon. I didn't understand what the message was. And then that was on Halloween 1988. And then December 2nd, that same year, the other one played, which was Lara's theme from Dr. Zhivago, and it was a music box that my brother had given her for Christmas. Again, I think it was my mother, and I think she was trying to get my attention. Well, the odd thing was, 5 years later, a very good family friend of ours died on that day, of 1993. December 2nd, 1993. And so my mother died in 83. 5 years later, she got my attention with both of the music boxes. And the second one happened on December 2nd of 1988. And 5 years later, a very good friend of our family's passed away. So I think she was trying to forewarn me. I don't know how I was supposed to deduct that from what she was telling me, but I think that's what the message was. So they had never played by themselves before or after that. So that's kind of like a one-time instance with each of them. So I think it was just a venue for a message. Whereas the haunted object, I got vibrations from it. I got bad feelings from it. Eventually, there was in Kittery, they have a great recycling center, and people drop off stuff that they don't want anymore. And there are a lot of really good stuff there. So I found this gilded picture of the baby and Madonna with child, and it looked like a Botticelli painting, only it was on silk, and there was a convex piece of glass over it. It was just beautiful. And I thought to myself, who would want to throw that away? It's beautiful. So I took it home. I didn't hang it immediately because I wanted to repaint the frame. So I did that within a couple of weeks, and I hung it. And I can't say that it was the cause of things that happened, but many strange things happened in that Victorian house after that. But I still wasn't catching on. So
wow.
I moved to Arizona, and then there was an acceleration of things happening. And I came home from work one day. Once I had moved to Arizona, I was working in a hotel, and I had a really bad encounter with my front desk manager. Okay, so he was just abominable. He smelled bad, he looked bad, he looked like he was into drugs, and he was trying to tell me what to do was totally off the wall, and he was wrong. So I let him know it. When I came home, I got off the shift at 11, but there was a lot of work to do. I got home by 12. I walked through my bedroom, and I had this beautiful ceramic, it's called the North Wind, with like ripples of waves coming off. It almost looks like a rendition of the sun, only it was turquoise, and had these little cupped hands blowing something. So I thought it was beautiful, but it wasn't on my wall. It weighed almost 2 pounds. So I thought, where the heck did that go? And who would want to take that? So I walked around the foot of the bed, and there it was, lying on the floor, broken. And I'm looking up at the wall, and I'm looking at the floor, wondering, how did that get there? The hook was still in the wall. So that kind of freaked me out. So next day, I got a hold of a couple of my psychic friends, and I asked them what they thought was going on. And both of them said, there's something in your bedroom that's acting like a portal, and you really should get rid of it. And I'm thinking, I haven't got any paintings. What the heck are they talking about? So my one good friend who's psychic, she lived close by, and she came over, she walked in the bedroom, and she walks over the picture, she points to it, she says, that's your problem. It's acting like a portal, and it's allowing negativity to come through. What the connection was with the guy at work, I'm not sure. But it was definitely not positive. And I thought, it's an iconic religious icon. How could that be negative? How could it be wrong?
Mm-hmm.
But with use and with intent, in satanic rituals, they use crosses and put them upside down. So it has to do with intent. So I don't know if that picture came from a good Catholic household where a lot of unspeakable things happened, or if there was a murder in the house. But I think that picture was imbued with some negativity.
And
wow.
I was just, because as you were doing that, I was just listening. I was just thinking, because this isn't like the first piece that's ever, art, where somebody brings a painting in, they're like, I love this painting, and then just weird stuff happens all over the house.
Yeah.
And I've wondered about that, because maybe just when you think like the picture you have, obviously that's not going to be used in a ritual. I don't see somebody taking some artwork, setting it in the center of an altar, putting all the stuff, doing the whole ritual around it, and then now we've got this picture of a clown that's going to haunt this family for the rest of their life as they're taking it around. It's just all of a sudden some people just this picture of a vase with flowers, and all of a sudden, stuff just started really happening in the house. You're like, why these pieces? What is the attraction to some of this art? Because Go ahead, Chris.
Maybe I can. The only thing I can think of with that is maybe somebody used that as an intention at an altar for their loved ones, which their loved one came back and haunted the family who picked it up. Like they donated it to a thrift store, but somebody put it on an altar saying, "This is my ancestor altar, and she loved this vase," and then they got rid of it, and the spirit don't know whose house they're in, so they're just going to haunt that person until they get rid of that item. That's the only thing I can think of on that one.
Yeah, but I will say that both of the psychics thought that it was a negative portal. So how that came about, I don't know, but it might have come from being in a negative atmosphere. Maybe that was just a very negative family. So I don't know exactly, but in answer to your question, Mark, I can understand why you would question why the music box is not being considered haunted, whereas the picture was, because so many things happened seemingly when that picture was around in conjunction with it.
It was just interesting to get your thoughts on two objects. Maybe like the music box might have some kind of love attachment connected to, and the what you would think would be a Madonna and child painting. Maybe if it was at a church, there would be love associated with that too. But it became something. It was just an interesting contrast of.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But you have lots of examples like that in your book. I thought your reincarnation story of the monk at the Glastonbury Abbey, the first abbey in England, was a pretty interesting story.
Thank you.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I think Past Lives has been covered recently, or it's coming up.
What do you mean, on this show, or what do you mean?
Yeah, I think it's been covered on the Three Beards, but
I see.
Yeah.
Well, we can do that as a tease, Yeah, that's a.
Hey,
it's coming up right now. Here we go. Continue.
But it is interesting that there's the monk story. You may have had 2 or 3 past lives. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I think past lives, your first recognition of it is when you're really drawn to something. You have an affinity for it, and it feels very close and near and dear to you. Or, for instance, enfants savants that have this area where they're really, really intelligent, like they might be musical geniuses, but in other areas they aren't, and sometimes they make the connection to past lives where they gather all this information. So I've always loved England. I had a love affair with England when I was a little girl, and I wanted to go there. I've always loved stonework, stone buildings, bridges, roads, anything to do with stones. So I also knew that I'd been a monk. I don't know how, but at least in 2 or 3 lifetimes. So I had a really good friend who went to the same, it was an environmental class together. And we would study together at his place in Hampton, New Hampshire. And one night he told me he had this dream about somebody calling him Bly. And he felt that he was in England. He felt that he was at Glastonbury Abbey. And he said they were digging for something. And he said to me, "And you were in the dream." I said, "Well, what did I do?" And he said, "I don't know, but you were holding a candle and you were lighting the way for me." So he said he was afraid to go to bed the next night because he was concerned about the dream continuing. And it did. It continued for 3 nights. So this happened in the beginning of November of 1973. On Thanksgiving vacation, about 3 weeks later, he went to McGill University, and I don't know if it's in Toronto or where it is, Anyway, he decided he would do some historical research on Glastonbury Abbey, hoping that that would open the door to finding more information. Well, he did, and that was before the internet. And he found out this information that there was a man by the name of Frederick Bligh Bond, who was a member of the Psychical Research Society in England. He was also an ecclesiastic architect, and he was an illustrator. And he had been asked by the Psychical Society to help them find the foundations of the Edgar Chapel. And he decided that the way he was going to do it, which was very unorthodox at the time, this is, I think it's about 1908, he was going to use what could have been called as a seance, but they were actually using automatic writing. And they started connecting with monks. One group was called the Watchers, and they were from several different centuries that had occupied Glastonbury Abbey. They were the communicants. There was also someone called Johannes Bryant, and Johannes was the main communicant with Frederick Bligh Bond. And he was also the stonemason, and he had built the Edgar Chapel, and he knew where the foundation was. And through the automatic writing, they got exact measurements and locations down to the inch.
Wow.
They had all of this information, and they found the foundation for the Psychical Society. But they didn't like the methodology, and they didn't release the way they did it for quite a while. 5 years, as a matter of fact. So when Bligh Bond came out with Gate of Remembrance, where he lists all of these sessions where all of the information came through and who came through. And we're talking, one abbot was Abbot Whiting. I forgot the second one, but they were from 2 different centuries. And of course, Johannes Bryant. Johannes Bryant being the stonemason, he wanted to be a monk, but he wasn't into the religious stuff. He was into nature. He preferred going fishing than going to do the prayers and sing and so forth. He'd go off fishing. Apparently, the abbey was very self-sufficient. They had gardens. They made their own beer. I guess they wove their own clothes. They were very self-sufficient. So anyway, putting everything together, we found out that my friend Sam, in the book he's called Izzy, that he was Frederick Bligh Bond, and that I was probably Johannes Bryant. I get a very strong feeling that I was. I just love stones.
Yeah, the other abbot was Abbot Beer.
Thank you, Abbot Beer. Yes. Very good. So there were actually, historical personages that came through these readings where they found all this information. And they also found the foundation of, I believe, the Loretto Chapel as well, which they didn't know because all of the blueprints had been destroyed. They knew a few things, but a lot of it had been lost to time.
It'd be a terrible injustice if that abbot was not in charge of beverages. It would be a terrible injustice. Abbot Beer. It's like, what are you in charge of gardening? God, you guys missed an opportunity. So close.
But you do use the interesting term for this experience with, and it's called psychic archaeology. I like that one.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was, but they didn't want to recognize it as being so. It was just so unorthodox at the time. But he was a psychic archaeologist.
That just something, just even in just that as a subject, psychic archaeology. I mean, that one is a field, especially, just for people that aren't into it, they're just like, what? But when you think about it, like when you start getting this stuff where people are able to see stuff, remote viewing, then you can start getting this thing where, I mean, just with anything like we've done on these shows, just at some point, I don't care how much you don't want to believe it. If you could say, I don't believe in the dowsing rods, but when somebody goes by and they're like, there it is. There it is. There it is. Yeah. Eventually you have to start saying there's got to be something to this.
Yeah.
Like psychic archaeology. I mean, if you're going around and saying, okay, that the object we're looking for is 2 feet down under those stones, and you find it, you're like, oh, that was just a lucky guess. Well, okay, maybe the first one, yes, but when you do it again, at some point you have to start saying, okay, as a scientific side, okay, we got to figure out how this is working, but that's obviously working. And so you can't just say it's just pseudoscience. It's just fake. I'm like, at some point you've got to give some credibility to the fact that these people can do this, and that's yeah.
There's so much we don't know. The science that we know doesn't represent everything that happens in our universe. And just look at the light spectrum, for instance. We have a limited light spectrum, but dogs have a broader spectrum than we do. Animals most likely, in addition, do as well. With their night vision, great night vision. So how can we say that the dogs see something, the dogs don't see something that we don't see? I mean, if they're reacting to something and they've got a broader spectrum of vision than we do, we got to give that consideration,
Well, yeah, everybody that's got pets
exist.
Yeah, everybody has pets that you see it just all of a sudden a cat will just suddenly head just looks, and you're like, and my dogs will do that every now and then. All of a sudden, I always just joke around. It's like you see a dead chipmunk or something, because all of a sudden they'll just pop their head and they're looking at, and they're just staring right at the wall. And I'm doing that whole thing in front of their face, like, hello, and they're just fixated on it. And so I start thinking, it's like, okay, there's something here. I mean, they're not just suddenly spacing off. I mean, so if people pay attention to animals, you're going to see, it's one of the things you notice. They see something, they're seeing something.
Mm-hmm.
My
and they're not thinking of it in terms of psychic. They're thinking of it in terms of something very natural that they're perceiving. The other odd element of that dream series was I was a monk holding a candle for this Bly guy. And it's almost symbolic because if I were Johannes Bryant, I came through as a monk lighting the way for him to find the foundation of the Edgar Chapel. So it's kind of interesting. It's almost symbolic and yet directly related to history as well. It was an interesting revelation once I finally did all of the research and put it together.
Yeah, that's absolutely. Isn't it cool when you can put some of these pieces together and you have these, it's that whole thing like pulling that thread, then all of a sudden stuff starts unraveling, it starts to piece together, and it's all of a sudden you have those things, especially when it's something completely random, you didn't really notice it, and all of a sudden it's like this locks in place, and then it's pretty cool. It just boom, it just expands, because now you can break into looking into that individual, and it opens up a whole nother avenue, like the different things that they were into to add to the story. That's fantastic. You're able to put those pieces together.
Yeah, so it's, some people would not think that it's hard, concrete evidence, and it isn't, but there's a pretty good indication to me that I'm on the right track in making some of these assumptions about that past life. I feel very strongly about it.
Wow.
With these unexplained phenomena that you bring up in Gateway to the Paranormal.
Gratuitous plug.
You also cover a really unique out-of-body experience. The music of the sphere. You have some great imagery in there. It's kind of like being floating amongst the planets. And can you explain what transpired there? You really didn't think that there was something that happened during the day to initiate some kind of
visionary experience?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know why I had that dream when I did. I compared notes with my brother Dale, and he had something very similar as well, but we didn't know about it until years later. But one morning I was living in Denver, and spring and summer come pretty early. And one day I woke up and I was suspended in the middle of the universe. And I was scared to death because I could feel there was nothing beneath my feet. And I was scared to death I was going to fall. And there were three huge beings behind me on the right-hand side. I couldn't see them, but I sensed them. And they were about 60 feet tall. They were huge. So they intuited to me to keep looking straight ahead and not to think about nothing beneath my feet. So I was looking at the universe. I was looking at the solar system. I think the sun was behind me, and I could see how there was this soft translucence, luminescence, I should say, and then there was the dark blue of the sky, and then black in the distance, and the black was peppered with all kinds of teeny tiny stars. And then I started hearing this vibration that was very similar to triple tonguing if you play a wind instrument. Very rapid tunes, but they were vibrations. They weren't. Of course, you think about it here in 3D, they're vibrations too, but these were purely vibrations. They were different. So but in the tunes there were words. The vibrations translated to words, and the words were, "The sun is married to the earth, the moon, and the stars." And they sang it 3 times. And that was the end of the dream. I was zoomed back to my bed and I woke up. And the odd thing was, it was more than an epiphany, it was more like a rapture. I was so elated when I came back. I felt totally alone except for those 3 beings. But even in being alone, it was like I was given this gift of this information that was just so otherworldly.
Wow.
I
I
really
was
believe
gonna ask if it was a calming, positive, feeling with these beings, or if there was more of just an, ominous. Because like when you said, don't look down. I mean, what's most people, whatever you do, don't look down. The first thing you want to do is look down.
Yeah, I was scared to death I was going to fall because it was just nothingness. And it was like they calmed me in a very strange way and told me to just look straight ahead. Not in words, but it was impressed upon me to do that. So it changed my focus, and I was fine. I didn't fall. It was weird.
Wow.
But it was exhilarating. Exhilarating.
Wow.
Lynn, in a movie like Communion, there are the therapist scenes where people were bothered by their abductions, with the personal story that you just recounted. You said that there was more of a rapture feeling. But both cases are different. But in your studies, have, after some event happens, are a lot of people profoundly changed one way or another? Like, there's really not very much. It's like, it was okay being abducted. Is it more of like one or the other, elation, fear?
I think experiences like that have a lot to do with your belief system and your how psychically aware you are, how consciously aware you are. The out-of-body experience in the universe was more of a spiritual experience. As far as being abducted, I don't know. That really depends on how the abduction affected you. A lot of people don't even remember that they were abducted. It has to be revealed under hypnosis. I think that my brother Wes had been abducted in 1965 when he was chased by the UFO. And the reason I say that is, shortly after it happened, he started having severe nosebleeds. His pillow would be soaked with blood. And only after studying UFOs a few years later, I thought maybe he had been implanted with something up in his nose, in the nasal cavity, and that often happens. As far as his regular behavior, I didn't notice any change in him. But then again, he probably wasn't consciously aware, although I think subconsciously there was a message that something had happened, but he never wanted to talk about it. It took him 4 years to tell me that it happened. And of course, it coincided with the incident at Exeter. It happened right about the same time. I can't say that it was the month of September, but right about the same time in 1965. So I think a lot of people, if ETs aren't in their belief system, they're going to be petrified, and it will affect them once they come to the realization that something happened to them. You know, it's going to be a petrifying experience if you see something that you don't believe even exists.
Oh yeah. And before we get too much further, Ron had asked a question on your experience. How long was that?
How long was what?
Your experience where you were with
Out of
those
body?
three beings. Was it a few minutes, or was it, was it one of those where it feels like it's hours and then it's just you look up and...
In Earth time, probably maybe 5 minutes. If I had to put Earth time on it.
Okay. That's...
I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, I just wanted to get that question in before we got too far away from it, because then...
Good, thank you. Thank you for that question. And thank you too, Mark, for asking, because I can understand where there might seem to be a dichotomy between the two. To me, one was a really spiritual experience without really any ETs. I felt that these were spiritual beings, whereas the ETs are more substantial, more of substance, more of a 3D dimension once you're interacting with them. Because I don't hear reports of them being translucent. They seem to be solid. So I think that abduction, depending on what the purpose is, can be very traumatic. I wouldn't call it a spiritual experience, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. That answers my question. And, we still need to touch upon your investigations at the James House.
Mm-hmm.
Your documentary at America's Stonehenge as well. So might as well try to squeeze both of those in the next 10 minutes or so. 15
the
minutes.
JamesHouseMuseum.org is a site for this. The James House Museum. So.
Yep, that's the site. Well, the James House is full of spirits, and they're not always evident all the time. The conditions have to be right. It depends on the number of people that are there. For instance, there are certain areas where the spirits seem to gravitate. There's the basement, the trunk room, and the attic. We've taken pictures in the attic where there are hundreds of orbs that we've picked up. There are really small ones. There are some that are colored, different colors, blue, red. The smaller orbs I've come to believe are children. I think a lot of children died in the James family. I think they had a lot of babies that didn't make it, a lot of disease, or a lot of them died in the winter. One of the first things I picked up on in my walkthrough, I got to the attic, I sat down, and all I could feel was children. And I think that in the winter they went up and they played in the attic, but I think they also convalesced up there because it was the warmest place in the house. I just feel a lot of children died there. Also, too many family members died of TB, and several of those are hanging around. But the atmosphere there started to grow a little ominous because I think that some portals were opened and there was some stuff coming through. So a group of some female friends and I, we did a clearing of 3 of the portals to try to calm things down because we were getting photos of black fog, and you couldn't see it with your eyes, but it was showing up on the photos.
Wow.
And that's never good. That's kind of negative. The basement, it seems like the spirits will gravitate toward the attic or the basement. And I don't know if it's the farthest place away from humans. I don't know why they do that, but that has been my experience. The ones in the basement's really kind of scared me. And that is one of the areas where we got the black fog. But I think that there had been children that maybe died in the winter, or stillborn children, and not everybody could afford headstones. So I think that maybe a couple of children have been buried in the basement. So I think that's part of the heaviness down there.
Do you think it's has to do too with a lot of these places? Because there's a lot of things where it seems like more and more like ominous activities occurring in some of those. Do you think it's the investigation style, where there's a lot of we've talked about it on a few shows, where there's a really popular TV show where they've kind of spawned an entire generation now, right, of provocative, the real provocative investigation, where you call out saying, I want you to come do something, make something happen, where, I'm wondering if this has a little bit of that effect now. Well, that's why you're getting so much, darker, a heavier presence than you would just before, like just, normal interaction.
Okay, you guys blinked out. What did you just ask me, Craig?
I'll repeat just real quick. Just like, with all the activity that's going on, just do you think that that's what's causing this? Because people are more they're more aggressive in their investigation technique?
I definitely think that affects it, without a doubt. Also, too, sometimes these people they don't protect themselves, so anything can come in. There's that too. So attitude has a lot to do with it, and your investigative technique.
Yeah, because I know Dawn and was saying that they've had a lot more activity ramping up on the ship too.
Oh, truly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've got another entity that's that's a pretty a lot more ominous. Like I said, more aggressive.
Really?
Do you think? Do you think possibly they take on other people's spirit? Like if you come on the ship and you're an evil one, they're like, okay, I like his personality. I'm going to take that and I'm going to project that out through the ship. And you might not know when you get home that they took your personality and they're using that as their entity now.
Yep, you get attachments. And yes, like attracts like in that instance, yes. Yeah, you've got to go there. You should feel well physically, and you should have a good attitude when you go. And if you go there negative, you're going to pull the negative stuff in. And especially too, if you're not protecting yourself, and you should have some kind of sense of a belief system that you yourself believe in and you abide by. So if you want to protect yourself, do it in accordance with your belief system. And that should work for you. But some people, they just don't care. They just want to get the scientific evidence and disregard the spiritual aspect, and that's a mistake.
And like I said, as we're wrapping up here real quick too, so let's talk about Dennis Stone there at America's Stonehenge. You guys did. So what was the biggest thing that happened there while you guys did the investigation?
Well, we figured that there was definitely energy there, and that's why we wanted to follow up with an investigation and then the video on it to attract more attention, of course, for America's Stonehenge. There was a lot. One of the strangest things was the compass. Jim Ashworth had a wrist compass, and that thing started spinning during it was a channeling session at the sacrificial table. So the psychic medium, Mary Melanson, was channeling a chief, and he was giving us information about those who came before the immigrations from the Mediterranean area, and he was talking about how peaceful it had been. And then there's a really contentious tribe from Egypt that came. It was a sun-worshipping tribe, and they sacrificed their own children. So there was a lot of that heaviness that we picked up on. And Jim's instance with the spinning compass happened during that conversation with the chief at some point. It's hard to exactly correlate it. There were other things. There's a section in the Oracle chamber where 3 of our cameras on different occasions simply would not work. I took 5 black pictures at this one particular, it's a shelf area like a reliquary. So it's a built-in shelf area in the Oracle chamber, which I think they used for either storing body parts, and by that I mean bones, ashes of bones, blood, anything like that that might have been sacrificial to them. And that particular shelf in the oracle chamber, simply, the cameras wouldn't work. Also, too, there was a black entity caught on camera by the Holzer file cameras they came to film. They came to film at the end of our investigation. So if you watch that, they've got a picture of that too, just outside of the oracle chamber, but right at the end there where our cameras wouldn't work. Fascinating stuff.
Wow.
And I think just as heavy as Mary Melanson and I picked up, we picked up on all kinds of sacrifice. We picked up on the fact that water is generally, they would sacrifice food, sometimes body parts, water, things that were dear to them, depending on the ritual and depending on the people that went there and performed their ceremonies. But some of them were very dark. And Mary picked up from the chief that they were dumping blood into the water system. There's a very sophisticated drainage system there that was developed before the stones were even put up. And I couldn't believe what she was saying. She says, yeah, he's telling me they're pouring blood down the drains. Well, I read a book by Mary E. Gage, and she has studied Northeast stone structures. And she said that those who were a little bit negative, they would dump water in as a reverence to the gods. But this particular tribe that was very sacrificial, sacrificing children, they were the ones that dumped blood.
Wow.
So, yeah, pretty hard hitting.
Yeah,
that's the gross side.
Yeah, April saying that's ancient black magic.
Well, that's what we're talking about. There were some dark tribes there, some dark people for a while. And then again, there were the Native Americans, and there were some other tribes from Egypt who were much more spiritually inclined. And their ceremonies were more celebratory rather than ritualistic. You know, the rituals can be pretty dark.
That's some of the things too, is like, because there's pretty good evidence that, early European, from the Isles, Welsh and everything came over there too. So there's also a good chance that, you've brought some of that influence over as well.
That's true.
True. That would. Yeah. So that's, wow, that is crazy.
Heavy stuff going on. Another thing that I picked up on is she said before everybody came from the Mediterranean, that the tribes would meet there at least once a year and they would celebrate. They all lived in harmony. And she says, they're celebrating berries. They're talking about celebrating berries. I said, I've never heard of that. Well, again, in Mary's book, Mary E. Gage, she mentioned that they came for the berry season and they celebrated the berry season, the blueberries and the raspberries and whatnot, the wild berries that grew. I mean, who'd have known? I'd never heard of that. And she picked that up from her channeling with the chief.
Wow. That's, man, now that video, is that on YouTube for people to see?
It is. It's called Is America Stonehenge Haunted?
All right, so America Stonehenge, haunted. That's what Dennis, you should have told me about this. Man.
Well, the first one we did for him was more of an expose so that people would become aware of the great location. But the second one, we wanted to deal with, what's there. And did anybody leave any trace of their being there? Is there still energy left? And we found out there's a lot of energy still there at American Stonehenge.
Did you hear any foreign voices, foreign languages being used that you might be able to get an inkling that it's ancient Mexican or Phoenician, some kind of like Eastern Mediterranean type language?
Well, that's a really good question mark. I did not.
That, look at my shirt.
Good. Question mark. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's great. That's a great logo. I will say the only voices that I heard were children, and Hans Holzer, the Holzer files, they picked up on children in the woods as well. Well, apparently those are the ones that were sacrificed because they would they would use the children in their spring rituals, but also the tribe that was very similar to the Incas. They were the ones that sacrificed their children. So there's some question as to whether or not the Stark tribe, which was really kind of chased away, went south to Mexico. So there is that. And the other thing you asked me, they did find, they found script. I'm forgetting it. Punic, Iberian Punic. They did find scripts there. So that's an indication of the Mediterranean area. But as far as languages, no, I just heard children's voices. Yeah, but I did get, which I meant to tell you, is very definite mental impressions of the way these people were dressed. And they compared to the Phoenicians and the Egyptians. I saw three elders standing over the table watching the sacrifices going on, or whatever was going on at the table. And they were bald, they were wearing these long robes, and they had this headband. And it was like something that was woven. It was almost like straw. Well, one of the psychics, Han Holzer's psychics, said that it was papyrus that they had woven. But anyway, it was yellow and gold, which to me symbolized the colors of the sun. And dead center of this headband was a snake insignia. And I looked up snake on the internet, and then I found the Brotherhood of the Snake. And the Brotherhood of the Snake was established in Mesopotamia about 3000 BC. And it was established as like a brotherhood to help enlighten people who had been physically oppressed, as in slavery. So these are the people that came to America's Stonehenge. It was that same Mesopotamian area of people that came, that included the Phoenicians, Assyrians, section that is now Turkey, but that's who started that Brotherhood of the Snake. And then you've got the serpentine walls at America's Stonehenge. You've also got some of the stones that have triangular heads replicating the head of a snake. So serpents were very important to whatever celebrations or rituals that they performed there. Snake was very important. And it was odd that I could see this coiled snake with the asp head sticking out. And I found exactly that on the internet. So that gave me an indication of who it was. That's at least during one of the migrations of the people that were there.
Okay, so, Lynn, so it's almost like two independent research teams had the same visions. It came to the same conclusions, without
cooperation. You mean?
Consulting each other or something.
There had been Hans Holzer and three of his psychics that he had taken up there in the 70s. So he wrote a book about that called Long Before Columbus, a book I had not read until after the investigation. So there was the information from what the psychics gave, then there was our investigation, and then there was the Holzer files who came up and did their own investigation, and a lot of our information cooperated. Of course, people get different things. You get different entities coming at different times, but a lot of it was in agreement over a long period of time and from three different sources that didn't know each other, So it's kind of cool.
That is, man, we are running out of time here.
Yes, we
I just looked at the clock and I'm like, oh, we got to wrap this up. All right, so we're gonna do a real quick rapid fire here. We're gonna share a few things here. All right, so first off, everybody needs to. Here we go. I'm gonna put them up on screen here, and all right, class, everybody, read along with me here. All right, we are going to go with here, Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience on Facebook. Everybody needs to go over, like that, follow them. They have information. Her and Willy Hassell, do this. They're going to be reigniting the show here. It's after its hiatus. So follow them. Also coming up, Para Expo 2022 on board the USS Salem. Go like this, and everybody keeps messaging me here. People, stop it. Stop it. I'm trying to show people here. All right, so go there, like that page. That's going to be May, you said? May
20 to 22, 2022.
Yes. So that's going to be... Yeah.
Like a 2.5 day fair.
Yeah, I actually like just the whole synchronicity of that. May, 20 to 20, the 20th to 22nd of 2022. That's pretty cool. So go there. You're going to go to lynnem.nickerson. So it's lynnemnickerson.com is site. It links not only to the Edge of Reality TV, Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience, link for her book, Gateway to the Paranormal. Soon, I'm assuming there'll also be another link for another soon to be coming book somewhere around in this area. Yes. So check that. And then here's the book that Mark's holding up, our personal non-bearded Vanna White, Gateway to the Paranormal by Lynne Nickerson. Just said check that out. Like I said, purchase that on Amazon. Now, can you purchase it from your site, or is it just through Amazon?
Just through Amazon right now.
Okay. And then then the up and coming, it is live, but it's still in process of being completed. But the jameshousemuseum.org for the James House for information on that as well. So there, I think did I miss anything?
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Greg.
Yes.
Very thorough. Good job.
I was worried I was going to miss something. All right. So, Lynn, I really appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And now we're going to come to the train wreck part of the thing when I try to do all of our stuff, because this is when it gets really ugly, because I just mash the buttons and we just find out what happens. So we'll take, so you might want to run before this occurs. So, you're not tied to it. So, all right. Well, hey, so here we go. All right, everybody. We're going to start here with Nanny Cakes. Nancy Burke is our sponsor. Go to Nanny Cakes 407 on Facebook, or give her a phone call in the Central Florida area at 407-923-2898. Mention Three Beards, and you're going to save 15% on your cake order, which for anybody in the Central Florida area, wedding cake, saving 15% on, that is an amazing deal. So, I mean, you don't want to miss out on that. Redbubble.com is the place where we have our merchandise. Go put in Three Beards Podcast so you can buy our merchandise. If you want, you can also go to patreon.com/Three Beards Podcast and adopt a beard. And maybe we'll be able to donate one to a poor soul that's up in, the top right square that might need one. So go to patreon.com, support the show that way as well. Like and follow us on all the social media, subscribe on YouTube. We're trying to get to that magical 1,000 number, because that's, the world apparently opens up and magic rainbows fall from the sky when you get to 1,000, but we don't know that yet. So we're trying to experience it to see if it's true. But this show is rebroadcast on Zeno radio app, courtesy of Patriot Radio, every Thursday night, starting at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks to J&J Beard Company. Go to jjbeardco.com. Thank them for being willing to do us. Listen to me. Wow, I just got provocative. Wow. For being willing to put us on there. So that's fantastic. So everybody, thank you for watching. Appreciate it. Lynn, again, thank you for being on the show. Really appreciate it. Mark, thanks for your help, sir. We will do this again, and we'll check on the status of the beard growth as always. So everybody, have a great night.
Good night.
Good night.